Welcome to the Buddha Dhamma TV. I am Lisa Chu. Namo Buddhaya. I'm delighted to present today's program. It is not a regular sermon, but a discussion using a question and answer format. Here is Most Venerable Ajahn Achalo of Australia to lead it. For this session, we'll be introducing a special question and answer format for our Dharma talk. Many of you have requested this type of interactive session, and we are excited to bring it to you. Leading today's session is the esteemed Venerable Ajahn Achalo from Australia. It is a privilege to have him guide us in this enriching discussion. Please join me in warmly welcoming Venerable Ajahn Achalo.
I'll begin with my greeting. Good morning to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in the UK and in Europe. Good early evening to our friends in the Middle East and India. Good evening to our friends in Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia. Good late evening to our friends in Australia. Nice to see you. I hope you're well. JC, we have some questions. I also have a live audience, so I might read the question, JC, on this occasion.
Okay, sure, Ajahn.
Dear Ajahn, I dreamt that I invited Lumpur Cha to my house to give a Dhamma talk, and he really came with one of his disciples. My brother and I were overjoyed when we received him at the door. My brother wanted to do a chant upon receiving him, but Lumpur Cha said it was not necessary, and he stepped into the house. When we all stepped into the house, the place became a big hall filled with many people waiting for Lumpur Cha to go on stage to give the Dhamma talk. This is the only scene I could remember after I woke up. I never met Lumpur Cha before and have only seen his picture on the internet and in books. Can Ajahn interpret this dream for me, please? I'll try. It's a good dream. So the thing about visual phenomenon, nimittas or visions in dreams, it's different people will have different interpretations. And these great practitioners like Lumpur Cha, although they are arahants, they actually developed their virtue and their wholesome qualities for a very long time. So it's probably the case that they could have been arahants many lives earlier, and they delayed their final liberation so that they could benefit more beings. We see evidence of this in Lumpur Mun's biography, where apparently Lumpur Mun told his disciples that it had been 500 lives since he could have attained to arahantship. He had a bodhisattva aspiration, and he cultivated a further 500 lives. And then he reviewed how far he'd come, how much further there was to go, and he resolved to realize arahantship in his final life and benefit as many beings as he could. But we see that those extra 500 lives manifested in his extra special abilities at teaching, in mind reading, in knowing people's characters. So all of those qualities that you hear about in great disciples, the miracle of teaching, the psychic powers, the amazing samadhi, Lumpur Mun had extraordinary abilities. And then apparently, if I remember correctly, he had 12 or 13 arahant disciples. So Lumpur Mun is seen as a very important person in Thai Buddhism last century, the greatest arahant of last century that we know of. And of course, his arahant disciples had arahant disciples, and Lumpur Cha considered himself to be a disciple of Lumpur Mun. Lumpur Cha did have remarkable abilities, but was not known to reveal them too obviously or talk about them very much. Luang Por Chah had very broad wisdom, and he had the ability to pitch his teachings and his training in a way that would cause the largest number of beings to all grow together. So rather than putting an emphasis on teaching people who already had good samadhi, who could develop psychic powers, etc., he didn't make that his focus. Although I do know from discussions with some of my teachers that those conversations did occur peripherally on the side with people who had special abilities. But in general, Luang Por Chah pitched his training and teaching towards helping a large number of beings progress steadily and cohesively. So he had very broad and vast wisdom. But whenever a teacher's teaching spreads as effectively as Luang Por Chah's did in so many countries and got translated into many languages and books and videos and branch monasteries all around the world. I think when Luang Por Chah passed away, there were about 100 of his branch monasteries in Thailand, and now there are about 330, I believe. So after he passed away, his branch monasteries, his community continued to grow. And I think there's about 30 overseas now as well. So when there was one time when the Buddha said it during his life that his teachings would last for 500 years. I suspect sometimes the Buddha may be saying things to, when he entered Mahaparinibbana, Mahakassapa said we should have a grand council and we should recollect the teachings of the Buddha and kind of canonize them, put them in an order, decide which monasteries, which groups of monks would remember them. And it is said that after that great council, the statement was made that the Buddha Sasana will now last for 5,000 years. And so we're about 2,600 years into that. Something that one can't see because it's not visible to the ordinary eye is the merit that the Buddha accumulated while he was cultivating as a bodhisattva for Asankhya and 100,000 eons. For his teachings and his community, the various Buddhist lineages to survive for 5,000 years in samsara actually depends on some degree on that merit that the Buddha accumulated and dedicated. And then also all of those beings who have practiced with the bodhisattva, and many of them, when he practiced with the Buddha when he was a bodhisattva, who will come and then practice well under his dispensation and become arahants during his dispensation. There's a link between the merit of the Buddha, the power of his dedications over thousands of lives, millions of lives, that supports the sasana for 5,000 years. But within that period, there are going to be extra special practitioners that turn up every now and then and regenerate things, and it's like another mini turning of the wheel. And so Luang Por Man came and practiced so well and had all of those abilities and was so strict and sincere and was so inspiring to so many people. Then he caused the regeneration of the forest tradition in Thailand. And Luang Por Chah then, with his special abilities, particularly in the area of Ubon Ratchathani, Luang Por Chah would usually have about 100 monks spend the rainy season retreat with him. And then as his monks became more senior, they would go off and start their own branch monastery, so that when he passed away, there were 100. But a couple of decades after he passed into final Nibbana, there were 300. So I think this person's dream is an intuitive awareness of Ajahn Chah's barami. So Ajahn Chah's knocking on the door, you're able to welcome him in, and when he goes in, there's a very large audience. So this person is in Singapore. The disciples of Ajahn Chah often visit Singapore and teach, and Malaysia. It's close by. People have faith, they're generous, they're welcoming, they're respectful. So many of the great senior monks visit Malaysia and Singapore often. And I think this person's dream is she's seeing Luang Por Chah's barami, and is in a dream state that in some respects, like probably many of the teachers that this person listens to are disciples of Luang Por Chah, or disciples of his disciples. So his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren. They use those words when we go to the gathering in Ubon. The older disciples refer to Ajahn Chah's children, disciples, Ajahn Chah's grandchildren, disciples, Ajahn Chah's great-grandchildren, disciples. He's kind of seen as a lineage elder, a guru figure. And so when he goes to teach a large gathering of people, that's probably all of the people in Singapore that have some karmic connection with Luang Por Chah. And so it's a good dream. And we have access to his teachings that have been translated, published in books, which are available for free. And listen to his well-practiced disciples. Then we're all benefiting. So Luang Por Biak is a renowned meditation master, a disciple of Luang Por Chah, and he said, I was just mentioning before, the field of merit of the Buddha lasts for 5,000 years, and then that protects the Buddha Sasana, and after that it will degenerate, disintegrate, completely disappear. But within that time, as I said, other great practitioners will come, and they will cause a benefit to the Buddha Sasana and to the Buddhist practitioners. Apparently, Luang Por Man's field of merit that supports practitioners lasts for 300 years after he passed away. And apparently, Luang Por Chah's lasts for 150 years after he passed away. So we're living now in the middle of the field of merit of Luang Por Man and Luang Por Chah, and in the middle of the field of merit of Lord Buddha. And we do depend on this in ways that we can't quite see. The powers of darkness in the universe are very powerful. And the fact that we have the blessings, the teachings, the opportunity to practice is in no small part because of the tremendous efforts of the great practitioners that we depend upon as our refuge object. And it's an interesting consideration. There's some danger in modern times for people to kind of appreciate the teachings and the teachers less because the teachings are so available. It's almost like it's like the teachings can become just another commodity when you can listen to whichever teacher you ever want to, whenever you want to. Then I think if people listen to a couple of talks a day or a couple of talks a week and fill their mind with lots of different Dhamma talks from lots of different teachers, then they might not actually be able to remember who they learnt what from, and then they might not feel much particular gratitude. So it's a good practice. I just mention this to people that if you're listening to any of your teachers and you actually learn something, make a note that you learned this particular thing from that teacher. Make the effort to feel grateful, to feel respectful. I say this for your sake, not for my sake, because for myself, I remember Ajahn Pasano, Ajahn Jayasaro, Ajahn Sumedho. I remember what I learned from them because they were my teachers at a time when we heard a Dhamma talk once a week. And so now I remember when I heard that talk from Ajahn Sumedho that changed my understanding. And I naturally feel grateful to Ajahn Sumedho for it. I remember something Ajahn Pasano said to me when I was massaging his feet. I feel grateful for it. I remember what Ajahn Jayasaro said when I was there as an Anagarika that changed my understanding of the bhikkhu life and made it possible for me to appreciate it in a different way. And so for myself, my gratitude and respect for my teachers is based on the fact that I remember what they taught me and the occasion. And also on another level, there's some humility. I acknowledge that I didn't work it out by myself. There was a teacher who taught something that I didn't know. And then I developed an insight. And when we have that appropriate level of gratitude and appropriate level of respect, it actually makes us more receptive to the blessings, the field of merit of the great practitioners, because we have some humility as well. We're open to their blessings because we have a mind which is inclined respectfully to them. If we listen to lots of Dhamma talks and we don't give due respect or gratitude, a lot of modern people probably have a sense that they worked it out themselves. because I'd listened to lots of Dhamma talks, and then one day, hey, I had this insight. And it's like, actually, you didn't. Well, you did, but not all by yourself. And so it is helpful for us if we can remember what we learned from which person and feel grateful, because that makes our mind receptive to receiving blessings from the Sangha, past, present, and future. If we somehow feel we did it all ourselves, that actually makes us less receptive to the blessings, because there's still a big, strong sense of self that hasn't been humbled by the insights. So this person having this dream is a good sign. I would assume it means that the person has a humble, respectful, receptive mind and is open to being blessed by the merit of Luang Por Chah. And I rejoice. Dear Ajahn, in Buddhism, there are many teachings about cultivating the mind and developing beneficial mental states. However, does Buddhism also highlight the importance of physical exercise and developing the body? I feel exercise is important not only for strengthening the body for daily tasks and to prepare for aging, but I've also found cardio exercise helpful in improving my mental states. It lifts my mood and reduces stress levels. Given these benefits, I'm curious why Buddhism is largely silent on the role of physical exercise when having a body is a large part of the human experience. Thank you very much, Ajahn, for sharing your wisdom and helping us. So we have to remember the context in which Lord Buddha lived and when he gave his teachings. He himself was a wandering monk. For 45 years, he wandered around northern India teaching, and his disciples were wandering monks. So I'm pretty sure the monks did quite a lot of exercise, and they were told that they had to stay in one place for the rainy season retreat, that they were not allowed to wander, because in the early days, the monks would find rocky overhangs, forest groves, quiet fields, depending on the season. And if you wanted to visit your teacher, suppose you wanted a period of retreat, you might walk the equivalent of several counties or across a state line. But then after the rainy season retreat, you want to talk about your practice with your teacher, you walk and find them. And suppose you want to see the Buddha, you saw him 5 years ago, but you want to see him again, but he's staying in Savatthi, the monks would have walked to Savatthi. And so there was a lot of exercise in the lifestyle of the early generations. And I think so much so that it didn't need to be mentioned. The other thing is we practice walking meditation. So the forest monks, the wandering monks in the Theravada tradition, they do sitting meditation and walking meditation. So it's a general instruction that after so firstly the monks go for alms food. So they wander for their alms. And after their meal, there's often doing some chores. It's part of the daily life in the monastery. The monks sweep the leaves, the monks clean the bathrooms. And then I was instructed as a junior monk that we should do some walking meditation before taking a midday rest. Monks tend to get up quite early. Some of us sleep quite late. So in a hot country, people have a bit of a siesta around midday, but we do some walking meditation. It was explained to us that to digest our food properly, establish some body-based mindfulness before falling into sleep. It's a good practice. Tend to rest more deeply, but then wake up more fresh if you establish the mindfulness before the nap. So that's just a part of our lifestyle. The monks do arms round, the monks sweep leaves, the monks do walking meditation, alternate sitting and walking. So, but it doesn't really make it into the texts, but it's a part of the lifestyle. And I think it's good, isn't it, when the persons observe themselves that a bit of cardio is uplifting to the mind, good for their well-being. So I think that's the value of having mindfulness, isn't it? Is you notice the way things affect your mind, and you notice when something is helpful, something isn't helpful. And then if it's helpful, embrace it. I think too much cardio may not be good for samatha. I've noticed for myself that if I've worked out or done something really strenuous, I come and I try to do some samatha, that sense of the heart beating quite fast for quite a while after the session. It's not so helpful for the meditation. Sometimes it's a matter of timing. So you can do your cardio a few hours before the sitting session. That's probably fine. But yes, we should all aspire to have a healthy, balanced lifestyle with the appropriate amount of exercise. A lot of the monks do some yoga as well. Keep our hips loose, avoid knee injuries, sit for a long time. Some monks do Tai Chi, but it's a private thing. Dear Ajahn, I would like to ask what goes on inside your mind when you were in your meditation for 3,000 hours, referring to Ajah's book, 3,000 Hours of Meditation. Second part of the question, why when every time I meditate, do I feel sleepy at the end of the meditation? Is it because of a lack of effort and focus? So I guess it's like one imagines 3,000 hours is like, I didn't do it all in one session. So, so I would, it started with 6 hours a day when one of the times I went to Bodh Gaya. And it was alternated with circumambulations, full-length prostrations, and chanting. So it was probably like sitting for an hour and a half, 4 times. So, like you, there are the 5 hindrances and the 5 spiritual powers in different quantities at different times. So when I came to sit, there was probably some sleepiness, some dullness, some restless, some irritation, some craving, all of that stuff that we're very familiar with. And then I would take breath meditation as my main object. But because Bodh Gaya is noisy and kind of swarming and a lot of impingement, I found that having metta practice for the first 5, 10, 15 minutes of every session was helpful. And then inclining, the Lord Buddha says in the 11 Benefits of Loving Kindness Sutta that those who cultivate metta, their mind becomes peaceful easily. So I found that doing a lot of metta helped the mind to not become irritated and brittle, reactive. And then, alternating. You go for a walk to the bathroom, and then you look at other practitioners and feel joy about what they're doing, have some mudita, keep the mind bright with the Brahmavihara practices. But one of the reasons I loved practicing and still love practicing in Bodh Gaya is the Buddhanussati is so easy to do there. You just open your eyes and the sight of where the Buddhas become enlightened in this universe is right there. And so it becomes very real. And then you remember the life story of the Buddha. He practiced for 4 Asankhya's. He had his 6 years of austerity. He got his 8 bundles of kusha grass. He put them there. He sat down. He said, let my blood dry up. I'm not getting up from my seat until I realize the immaculate liberation from all suffering. And he did right there. And then, you study a bit deeper and that Kakusanda did the same thing, Konagamana did the same thing, Kassapa did the same thing, and Meitya will do the same thing in the same place. So it's such a wonderful, where I like to sit is approximately, I guess, 8 meters from the seat of enlightenment of Buddhas. So Buddhanussati is very rich there. And so you're suffering with a bit of heaviness, dullness, grumpiness, resistance. And you just kind of open your eyes and remember where you are, remember what happened there. It's easy to do the Buddhanussati, and it's easy to feel gratitude and qualities like loving devotion and respect. And that brightens the mind. And then it's possible to work with the hindrances. So on an ordinary day, I don't sit for 10 hours a day. I do many hours, but I don't do 10 hours. And but it is possible in Bodh Gaya. So I would go back on subsequent trips, and I slowly built the capacity to go from 1.5 hour sessions to 2.5 hour sessions over a period of years. And then it was 4 2.5 hour sessions. So there would be combinations of metta, breath meditation, Buddhanussati. And so if some lust comes up in the mind, I would do contemplate body parts, see the body as elements. And my favorite thing is just to sit longer and longer and longer, and there's that experience of aware of sounds, aware of them, but not, it's Luang Por Chah says, don't disturb the sound, like just kind of training the awareness to be aware of the sound without grasping at it. And you have the experience there because there's a lot of noise. Sometimes there's very beautiful, pleasant pujas. Sometimes there's, I don't like all of the chanting. I have my, like all of, everyone has their preferences. Like I love the Indian chanting, Sri Lankan chanting. I love the Chinese chanting. I love the Tibetan chanting, even with all the bells and the drums. It's fine with me. I don't particularly like the Cambodian or Burmese chanting or Vietnamese chanting. So what happens is, we experience things differently. But if you fall into really liking one puja, when a different puja comes around the corner, then you're going to not like it. And you get a lot of experience of that. And that helps you to not like it too much so that you don't dislike the other one too much. And that, as I was saying during the guided meditation, how Luang Por Nun says, keep the mind in the middle, keep the mind in the middle. One trains more and more at hearing without being someone listening. In the hearing, there is just the heard. But when you sit for longer and you do it for more sessions, normally what happens is there will be longer and deeper periods of spaciousness and stillness with less thoughts. But it's always been really interesting to me to notice that I can have a really peaceful, wonderful sit, come back in the afternoon, and there's this assumption that the next sit's going to be good. And you can sit and there's grumpiness, there's tiredness, there's irritation. The hindrances come back. And then sometimes you go in the morning and it's like there was a wedding, kept you up half the night with the speakers, like just 10 meters from your hotel window, guest house window. And the law is they're supposed to stop the loud music at 9 o'clock, but it sometimes goes till midnight and nobody stops them. But you didn't quite get enough sleep and you're sitting there and they're thinking, oh God, it's going to be terrible, so much dullness. And the mind just goes into really peaceful. It's fine. And so there's always that nice element of not knowing. Sometimes it becomes peaceful when you wouldn't think it would. Sometimes you think it's going to be peaceful and it isn't. But yeah, it's the 5 hindrances, the 5 spiritual powers, the faith, the energy, putting forth the effort gives rise to energy, cultivating the mindfulness, the concentration. When there is good mindfulness concentration, you can develop wisdom. But once one gets to the stamina in a way where you can sit for 2.5 hours in 4 sessions a day in a busy place, it requires that you keep your mindfulness quite sharp. And then when you keep your mindfulness quite sharp and you keep inclining the mind to come back to the breath, to the object, come back to the object, come back to the object, there are more and more periods of samadhi or peacefulness, collectedness, where time can go by quite quickly, and a lot of peace as well. And yeah, so the mind of not yet fully enlightened beings are full of all sorts of delusions and fantasies and grudges. But when you keep meditating, you learn to recognize them more quickly, and you learn skillful ways of reflecting to bring the mind into balance. And one of the reasons I really love practicing in Bodhgaya is that you do have to use every tool in your kit to keep the mind wholesome. And I really like it because it's a creative challenge. And I do stick earplugs in my ears and pull my hat over my face and face a wall. So I'm giving myself some supports in the circumspection. But even so, there's a lot of impingement. So hoping to go back again in February. I'm actually working towards 5,000 hours, currently at 4,200 of practicing at Bodhgaya. Hopefully be able to do that. Question 4. Does the alms bowl symbolize the skull of the Buddha? May I seek your guidance to explain to us the history of using alms bowls? So, as monks in the Thai tradition, I was told when I became a new monk that I should respect the alms bowl as though it was the skull of the Buddha. So we don't see it literally as the skull of the Buddha, but we are told that we should respect it as if it is the relic of the Buddha's skull. So originally the alms bowls were made of clay, fired clay. And so there's a practical reason why one has to be very careful with it and take care of it is you're going to break it if you, and it's probably valuable, probably fired at quite a high temperature and then has some value. So yeah, you have to take care of it. Otherwise you break it and you need to bother the lay people for another one. But I think it's also a recollection of the fact that it's people's faith in Lord Buddha is part of the reason they want to support the Sangha. Lineage continued to have arahants, so we remember that we live in part on the because of the merit of the Buddha, his fame, his good name, good reputation. And alms mendicancy in India was already a very ancient tradition. Some sects did use bowls. The Jains are kind of famous for only using one hand. So they were a particularly austere sect. Some of them wear no clothing, pull out all their hair, and only took one handful of alms food. And so when Lord Buddha was the Bodhisattva practicing the austerities, he explained that he only took one palmful of rice a day, and then he became extremely emaciated, as we know. So there were all sorts of sects and all sorts of practices. Interestingly, Lord Buddha did make it allowable for the monks to have a bowl that was big enough. It often says in the suttas that a monk went for alms and came back with enough food for 2 or 3 monks. So the Buddhist monks' alms bowls are a bit bigger. And there obviously seemed to be a culture of some monks would stay and continue their meditation. One monk would go for alms and come back and they'd share a meal. And in some monasteries, there was a rice gruel was available. You could go to and get some rice gruel if you wanted to have a light meal that day and wanted to keep meditating. You could just go and have a bowl of rice gruel and go back and meditating. So yeah. Later on in Thailand, it became an iron bowl, and more recently, it's a stainless steel bowl. And the forest monks' bowls were bigger than the city monks' bowls, and the reason was you could put your 3 robes inside it if it was raining. So the forest monks were wandering around in a place with a lot of tropical storms. So you could put your robes in your bowl, get completely wet, or try to find somewhere dry. But then once the rain shower ended, your cloth was still dry. And I met some Taiwanese monks in China recently, and they wanted to see the bowl and the robe, and they wanted to see how it all worked. Is it true that the robes fit in the bowl? They have very they had very fine outer robe, and they were like, we read in the sutta somewhere that the robe can be used as a pillow, and we're trying to work out how is that possible? Our robes are so thin. And it really is true that the outer robe, which is 2 layers, when it's folded in a certain way, works very well as a pillow, and the upper robe, when folded in 2, works very well as a blanket. And that's how the lower robe works fine as a sleeping cloth. So the monks, they had their bedding, they had their robes, which also worked as bedding, and they had their bowl, which also worked as a wardrobe in some respects. And I remember after my 5th pantra, I went on a tudong, wandering by myself. The very first day I got rained on at night, and so I thought, oh no, this isn't an auspicious start. And I was thinking, I'm going to get sick, my cloth's going to get smelly. Like rained on cloth that doesn't dry in time, it gets this horrible, sour, mildewy smell. And but then I was wandering out of Ubon Ratchathani city, and there was this shack in a rice field, and I realized that I could just put up my rope, hang up my robes, lie down in the middle of the shack, surrounded by my robes, have a nap, wake up an hour later, the cloth was dry, it was sunny, and it was very nice to say, okay, this actually really works. You just hang up your robes, wait for them to dry, have a nap, and keep walking. I walked about 700 kilometers in a 7-week period by myself. And I just wanted to experience what it was like in the day of Lumpur Man and Lumpur Cha. And came back to Wat Nanachat, looked about 5 years older after being sunburned for 7 weeks. But it was still a good thing to do. to see how Luang Por Man and Luang Por Chah walked great distances. You know, in those days, Thailand was mostly forest, and the trails would have been ox cart trails. And these days, you're often walking alongside a highway. It's a different, different experience. Dear Ajahn, I was a shy, lonely child, very self-conscious, especially of my appearance, and easily frightened of other children and people. I still have these feelings sometimes. How do I stop feeling self-conscious and practice metta when I find some people so scary? Some people are born more sensitive and more kind of anxious, or sometimes we're born that way. Sometimes experiences we have in our childhood can be conducive to those habits. I think the important thing is having metta for oneself. So if you establish loving kindness for oneself, the first stage of the metta practice, if you can really hold it in your own heart, then that kind of relaxes the self-consciousness. So it's like it becomes there's an experience of self, but there's an experience of self which has goodwill established for itself, held in the heart deeply. And then if you're around other people that you find threatening, you have that well-being, you have that loving kindness for yourself as a kind of a protection. So instead of, when you're holding loving kindness in the mind, anxiety is not going to get in to the same degree because you're holding a wholesome mind object in the heart center. Then the unwholesome ones, there might be ripples of it, but it can't fully take hold. And Luang Por Chah uses the analogy of sitting in the seat of the mind and not allowing the guests that come into the mind to fully take over. So sometimes we do that with just a really good quality of presence of mind. Other times we can do it with loving kindness, that because you're holding loving kindness in the mind, it keeps at bay some of the more painful self-consciousness and anxiety, fear. So, but the important thing is one needs to do it often enough that it becomes like second nature, like something that you are able to do. Suppose you begin every meditation, as I often do, 5 or 10 or 15 minutes with loving kindness practice, then it simply becomes something that you can pick up when you need it. Breathing in, may I be well. Breathing out, may I be happy. Breathing in, may I be well. Breathing out, may I be happy. You have it, the capacity to generate it quickly. So it's like pick that mind object up, hold it in the mind, and when you're feeling that loving kindness in the heart, it is a protection. And I don't think sometimes we can, some people are scary. That's the reality that we live in. There are people who are frightful and scary that may harm us, but we have to have common sense. And if a person, it has to be reasonable, doesn't it? Some people are more frightened, fear-based than others. But the metta practice is tremendous support. So I recommend that we all do it every day. First 5 or 10 minutes of every sitting. Very helpful. Creates good karma also. Question 6. Dear Ajahn, thank you for your wisdom and comforting words. My son-in-law made several suicide attempts. Sadly, 4 years ago he was successful, and he had practiced Dhamma. I regret not being aware of his tendencies and his most troubled mind. What will be the karmic consequences of such an action? And may I hope that he is in a better place now? So generally, a person, if they take their own life, they're experiencing sadness or a sense of despair. And that's usually not conducive to auspicious rebirth. So unfortunately, oftentimes when people take their own lives, they go to a not necessarily easy or happier destination, unfortunately. One can, particularly for people who are blood relatives or who have a close karmic connection, they can make merit and dedicate the merit, do auspicious, wholesome karma, and dedicate the merit to that person. The parents are probably the best. There's a strong karmic connection between parents and children. So if the parents of a child who commits suicide, make merit for that person, then they would be more likely to be able to receive it. And spreading loving kindness, so dedicating the merit of one's own meditation. So meditation does produce great merits, so one can dedicate the merit at the end of the meditation to any people that we know who may have made that choice. And one has to have compassion. Obviously, people who make that choice oftentimes don't feel they had a choice. And unfortunately, it doesn't end there. So and we all need to reflect on this, so that if ever we experience great despair, we have to be mindful that it's a mind state that will arise, stay for some time, and cease, but that killing the body will not resolve the situation. So the body dies, the mental continuum fueled by karma will go on. So we have to train ourselves to have patience and resolution and determination to get through difficult times. And meditation is very helpful. One of the things I learned from Ajahn Sumedho, sitting several of his retreats or living with him for periods of time, we just say things like, nothing can kill awareness. No matter how much suffering you've got, and you might feel like you can't take it, place your mindfulness on the awareness. And he would say, that which knows suffering is not suffering. So it's training ourselves to not be completely identified with, absorbed in, and fixated with the suffering, but even in a time of tremendous suffering, to notice that which is aware of it. And to notice the fact that the suffering can't kill it. And it would stand to reason that killing the body won't kill it either. And sometimes we have to take the examples of others and make a note of what not to do when times get difficult. But I do have confidence that generating punya, dedicating merit, spreading loving kindness, does help to ease the suffering of beings in pain, particularly when done by people who had a close karmic connection. So sorry for everybody's loss. And okay, last question tonight. Dear Ajahn, what is the afterlife for a dog? My dog passed on in May this year, but I still miss her very much. Whenever I think or talk about her, my tears start to swell up and my heart aches. I feel very bad and guilty that I didn't provide her enough love and attention. I should have done better. On her deathbed, I chanted Iti Piso together with Lumpur Anand's audio on. And shortly, she took her last breath and left us with tears rolling down from her eye. Am I doing the right thing? I've been wanting to know about her current condition. So that's very sweet that this person chanted to their dog as their dog was passing away, and had the chanting of a great master playing in the background. Yes, I think you did the right thing, and I rejoice. That's very sweet. And I have some cats who I love, and I had a cat that ran away. I was in India for 7 weeks, and the cat ran away in the 7th week. And I came back and I was sad about it. And I said to myself, okay, you are sad. I gave myself permission. You can cry for 1 minute, Ajahn Achalo. So I gave myself permission, and I did. I let tears roll down my face for 1 minute. And then I said to myself, enough. Beings fare according to their karma. And the cat has gone. It's okay. And then I got a new cat. So. But yes, if your cats stay with you for a long time. But I have trained myself to not love the other ones as much, because the thing is, the more where there is love, there is also suffering, and so we have to train ourselves to love the right amount. And yeah, he was so cute, Luke Gao. He was such a cute cat. Probably also not so bright. He was the only cat I ever met that You know how cats climb up a tree and don't know how to get down once or twice? Luke Gao continued to do that for months and months. Climb up the tree and not know how to get down, and get anxious and climb further up. When I stop, to get up the big ladder and go and rescue the cat again. But yeah, so because dogs are close to humans, among the what they call Satdelachan, among the horizontal-bodied four-legged beings, I think the dogs have a better chance of coming up to the human realm than many other animals, because they feel affection for humans oftentimes. They feel close to humans. They're paying attention to what the humans are doing. So, the mind becomes like what it gives attention to. And so, and particularly if a dog was like a good dog, did its duty to protect the owners and protect the house, and probably makes some merit as well. And yeah, I think chanting as the animal is dying is probably helpful, dedicating merit, spreading metta. I would say the chance of that dog having a fortunate outcome to their death is quite high. But I don't have the ability to check exactly where your dog went. You'll have to come and visit some of the masters that I know who do know. But I think you can, who can do those things. Although it's probably not that often that people come and ask them where their pet went. It's usually where their grandma go. But yeah, but it sounds to me like you can feel confident that your dog went to a happy destination. So they call Sukati. Sukati means human or heaven realms. Dukkati is the animal, ghost, and hell realms. So
Buddhanam Saranam Gacchami, paying homage to the noble triple gem in a beautiful and melodious manner. It is truly inspiring to see devoted people taking part in this sacred practice of showing respect and devotion. Their participation not only enriches the experience, but also ensures that these meaningful traditions are passed on to the future generations. Now, let us extend a warm welcome to Venerable Ajahn Achalo and his group as they lead us in this heartfelt act of homage. We have briefly introduced the Jataka stories, which recounts the Buddha's previous lives as a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva refers to one who strives selflessly to serve all beings. These stories offer valuable lessons and motivation to help guide us towards success. Encourage both children and adults to read these stories and watch these programs for inspiration and guidance. Now, let us present the Kakati Jataka story.
กากติชาดก ชาดกว่าด้วยนางกากี ในพุทธกาลสมัยครั้งที่พระบรมศาสดาสัมมาสัมพุทธเจ้าตรัสรู้อนุตตรสัมมาสัมโพธิญาณแล้วนั้นพระพุทธองค์มีพระประสงค์จะปักฐานพระพุทธศาสนาให้มั่นคงจึงได้เสด็จจาริกออกเผยแผ่พระธรรมโป รดแก่เหล่าสรรพสัตว์ทั้งหลายยังดินแดนน้อยใหญ่ในชมพูทวีปแม้ว่าจะมีอุปสรรคยากลำบากสักเพียงใดแต่พระองค์ก็มิทรงย่อท้อต่อความเหนื่อยยากพระวรกายเลยแม้แต่น้อยจนในที่สุดก็สามารถแผ่พระธรรมคำสอนให้สรรพสัตว์ทั้งหลายได้ยึดถือปฏิบัติเป็นหลักธรรมดำเนินชีวิตใต้ร่มธงธรรมอย่างผาสุกณพระอารามเชตวันมหาวิหารในสาวัตถีนครศาสนสถานอันเป็นที่ประทับของพระพุทธองค์นั่นเองชาวเมืองหลากตระกูลหลายชนชั้นต่างเดินทางเพื่อมารับฟังพระธรรมเทศนาจากพระบรมศาสดาด้วยความปีติยินดีเพราะบังเกิดความเลื่อมใสจนมีผู้คนศรัทธาเข้ามาบวชเป็นภิกษุสงฆ์เจริญภาวนาธรรมในพระพุทธศาสนาเป็นจำนวนมาก
อ้าววันนี้มาสมาทานศีลรับฟังพระธรรมเทศนาจากพระพุทธองค์ด้วยหรือท่าน
จะพลาดได้อย่างไรล่ะท่านโอกาสดีๆที่จะได้รับฟังพระธรรมจากพระพุทธองค์น่ะถือเป็นบุญวาสนาของพวกเราเลยละดูสิชาวบ้านมากันเนืองแน่นโอ้โหทุกคนก็ล้วนอยากฟังพระพุทธโอวาทจากพระองค์ทั้งนั้นแหละช่างน่าชื่นใจจริงๆ
งั้นก็รีบเข้าไปในโรงธรรมสภากันเถอะจะได้นั่งแถวหน้าจะได้เห็นพระพุทธองค์ชัด
ในครานั้นยังมีภิกษุหนุ่มรูปหนึ่งมีความกระสันอยากจะสึกพระพุทธองค์จึงทรงเมตตาเรียกให้ภิกษุหนุ่มมาเข้าเฝ้าเพื่อให้พุทธโอวาทดูก่อนภิกษุจริงหรือที่ว่าเธอไม่ยินดีต่อการบวชในสมณเพศเสียแล้ว
ข้าแต่องค์พระผู้มีพระภาคเจ้าเป็นความจริงพระเจ้าค่ะ
ดูก่อนภิกษุแล้วเหตุอันใดเล่าที่ทำให้เธอกระสันอยากละจากเพศบรรพชิตเสียเล่า
ข้าแต่พระองค์ผู้เจริญเมื่อข้าพระองค์ไม่สามารถละกิเลสที่เกาะกลุ่มจิตใจได้อยู่ไปก็มีแต่จะทำให้พระศาสนาเสื่อมเสียเหตุนี้ข้าพระองค์จึงอยากสึกพระเจ้าค่ะ
จากนั้นพระพุทธองค์จึงให้ธรรมโอวาทเตือนสติแก่ภิกษุหนุ่มผู้กระสันจะสึกว่าดูก่อนภิกษุทั้งหลายธรรมดาว่ามาตุคามอันเป็นสตรีเพศนั้นไม่ว่าผู้ใดก็รักษาไว้ไม่ได้แม้แต่บัณฑิตในสมัยโบราณครั้งก่อนจะยกมาตุคามนี้ขึ้นไปไว้อย่างวิมานชิมพลีท่ามกลางด้วยมหาสมุทรแล้วไซก็ยังมิอาจจะรักษาสตรีผู้นั้นไว้ได้เช่นกันเธอจงตรองดูเถิดแล้วพระพุทธองค์ก็ทรงระลึกชาติด้วยบุพเพนิวาสานุสติญาณนำกากติชาดกมาสาธกแก่ภิกษุหนุ่มพร้อมเหล่าสาวกดังนี้ย้อนไปในอดีตการก่อนยุคพุทธกาลสมัยณดินแดนพาราณสีนครภายใต้ร่มฉัตรแห่งพระเจ้าพรหมทัตทรงครองราชสมบัติอยู่นั้นในวาระเดียวกันนี่เองพระพุทธองค์เสวยพระชาติเป็นพระโพธิสัตว์บังเกิดอยู่ในครรภ์ของพระอัครมเหสีแห่งพระเจ้าพรหมทัตนั่นเองครั้นเมื่อทรงเจริญวัยแล้วนั้นก็เกิดเหตุการณ์อันน่าโทมนัสยิ่งนัก
เสด็จพ่อสวรรคตเสียแล้วเสด็จพ่อเสด็จพ่อ
หลังจากที่พระเจ้าพรหมทัตพระราชบิดาสวรรคตสู่สวรรคาลัยแล้วนั้นพระโพธิสัตว์ก็ได้ครองราชสมบัติเป็นพระราชาแห่งพาราณสีสืบต่อมาจากนั้นไม่นานพระราชาหนุ่มก็ทรงอภิเษกกับพระนางกากาติเป็นอัครมเหสีผู้มีพระสิริโฉมงดงามเปรียบประหนึ่งดุจนางเทพอัปสรแห่งสวงสวรรค์ก็มิปานจนเป็นที่ร่ำลือกันทั่วพระนคร
จริงหรือไม่ที่ผู้คนในเมืองนี้เขาล่ำลือกันนักกันหนาว่าพระมเหสีของพระราชานั้นน่ะสวยงามราวกับนางฟ้านางสวรรค์เลยทีเดียว
โอ้ยท่านเอ๋ยงามสุดจะบรรยายเลยละเกิดมาเนี่ยไม่เคยพบไม่เคยเห็นผู้หญิงที่ไหนสวยขนาดนี้มองซ้ายมองขวาไม่ว่ามุมไหนๆก็สวยไปหมดเลยถ้าท่านเห็นนะรับรองตาค้างแน่
ๆว่าแล้วก็ชักอยากจะเห็นเป็นบุญตาสักครั้งหนึ่ง
โอ้ยอย่างท่านนะคงไม่มีบุญสละมองข้าแทนก็แล้วกันนะข้าก็สวยพอไปวัดไปวาได้นะ
อุ้ยเห็นแล้วสยอง
ในครานั้นมีพญาครุฑตนหนึ่งมีนิสัยชอบเล่นสกาอยู่เป็นนิดมักแปลงร่างเป็นมนุษย์มาเล่นสกากับพระเจ้าพาราณสีพระโพธิสัตว์ฉับพลันที่ได้ยนต์พระสิริโฉมของพระอัครมเหสีก็มีจิตปฏิพัทธ์หลงไหลในความงามนั้นบังเกิดเป็นความสิเนหาจนยากจะทอดถอนใจได้
โอ้ช่างสวยงามอะไรเช่นนี้ช่างงามสมคำล่ำลือจริงๆนี่เราตกหลุมรักนางตั้งแต่แรกเห็นเลยหรือเนี่ย
ฉับพลันกิเลสก็เกาะกุมจิตใจพญาครุฑบันดาลความคิดลอบลักพาตัวพระอัครมเหสีไปยังวิมานฉิมพลีอันเป็นที่พำนักของตนโดยที่พระราชาโพธิสัตว์ไม่ได้ระแวงแม้แต่นิดเดียวและแล้วพญาครุฑลักพาพระนางกากาติไปยังสุวรรณภพของตนได้สำเร็จ
มาอยู่กับพี่เธอยอดยาหยีพี่เนี่ยจะใช้2 ปีกโอบอุ้มเจ้าให้มีความสุข
ไม่มีสิ่งใดจะต้านทานแรงกิเลสปรารถนาในใจของพญาครุฑได้เมื่อไปถึงวิมานฉิมพลีของตนพญาครุฑก็ใช้กำลังบังคับพระนางกากาติหมายจะให้นางตกเป็นของตนและแล้วพระนางกากาติก็มิอาจต้านทานแรงกิเลสราคะของพญาครุฑได้ในที่สุดพญาครุฑก็ได้ร่วมอภิรมย์กับพระนางกากาติสมดังใจปรารถนาฝ่ายพระราชานั้นเมื่อไม่เห็นพระนางกากาติอัครมเหสีตนก็กระวนกระวายใจด้วยความเป็นห่วงแม้นแต่ถามเหล่าขุนนางอำมาตย์ทหารก็ไม่มีผู้ใดผ่านพบ
พวกท่านทั้งหลายมีใครพบเห็นพระนางกากาติมเหสีของเราบ้างไหม
ข้าพระองค์ให้ทหารคนทุกซอกทุกมุมพระราชวังก็ไม่เห็นพระมเหสีเลยพะยะค่ะ
เมื่อค้นหาจนทั่วพระนครแล้วก็ไม่มีวี่แววของพระอัครมเหสีเลยแม้แต่น้อยพระราชาจึงตรัสเรียกคนทันนามว่านัตตกุเวนมาเข้าเฝ้าเพื่อให้ค้นหาพระมหาเทวี
นัตตกุเวนเจ้าจงไปค้นหามเหสีของเรากลับคืนมาให้ได้โดยเร็วนะ
รับด้วยเกล้าพระเจ้าค่ะ
นัตตกุเวนคนทันนั้นล่วงรู้ว่าแท้ที่จริงแล้วพญาครุฑที่จำแรงแปลงกายมาเป็นมนุษย์เพื่อเล่นสกากับพระราชาคือผู้ที่ลักพาตัวพระนางกากาติอัครมเหสีไปจึงคิดวางอุบายหาทางพาพระนางกากาติกลับมา
จะทำยังไงดีนะถึงจะไปลังเจ้าครุฑได้นะคิดออกแล้ว
นัตตกุเวนนั้นแอบนอนซุ่มอยู่ในดงตะไคร้น้ำข้างสระแห่งหนึ่งที่ซึ่งพญาครุฑนั้นมาเล่นน้ำเป็นประจำเมื่อขึ้นจากสระนัตตกุเวนจึงได้แอบเข้าไปเกาะอยู่ในระหว่างปีกของพญาครุฑด้วยร่างกายอันใหญ่โตพญาครุฑจึงไม่ได้ทันสังเกตหรือเอกใจเลยแม้แต่น้อยในที่สุดก็บินกลับมายังสุวรรณภพวิมานฉิมพลีของตน
พี่กลับมาแล้วจ้าน้องหญิงจ๋า
ในที่สุดแผนของเราก็ได้ผล เจ้าครุฑนี่ช่างโง่เขลาจริงๆตัวใหญ่ซะเปล่า
เมื่อพญาครุฑเผลอนัตตกุเวนก็หลบออกจากปีกของพญาครุฑแล้วหลบซ่อนตัวจนพญาครุฑลงไปเล่นสกากับพระราชายังเมืองมนุษย์ตนจึงลอบเข้าไปยังตำหนักเพื่อพบกับพระนางกากาติ
น้องหญิงจ๋าพี่ขอไปเล่นสกาสักแป๊บนะจ๊ะเดี๋ยวกลับมาจะหาของอร่อยๆมาฝากนะจ๊ะ
ที่ของเราแล้วทางสะดวก
แต่ทว่าทันทีที่นัตตกุเวนได้ยนความงามของพระนางกากาติก็พลันเกิดกิเลสต้องตาต้องใจจนสุดที่จะห้ามใจได้ดังเช่นพระยาครุฑ
โอ้งามยิ่งกว่าหญิงใดในโลกงามดุจดั่งนางฟ้านางสวรรค์โอ้เห็นแล้วสุดจะห้ามใจได้น้องนางกากาตินางฟ้าของพี่ช่างงดงามบาดใจข้าเหลือเกิน
นัตตกุเวนเห็นสบโอกาสก็ไม่รอช้าเข้าไปกระทำการเคล้าคลึงด้วยกิเลสกับพระเทวีในทันทีเสร็จสมอารมณ์ปรารถนาแล้วนัตตกุเวนก็หลบซ่อนตัวและพอสบโอกาสก็แอบเกาะปีกพญาครุฑกลับมายังเมืองพาราณสีเหมือนเดิม
เจ้าพญาครุฑเอ๋ยตัวโตซะเปล่าจะคิดมั่งไหมว่าจะเป็นพาหนะให้ข้าทั้งขามาและขากลับ รับส่งถึงที่เลย
วันหนึ่งในขณะที่พญาครุฑแปลงร่างลงเล่นสกากับพระราชาอย่างเคยนั้นคนทันนัตตกุเวนก็แซงทำทีถือพิณมาที่สนามสกาพร้อมขับกล่อมดนตรีเป็นทำนองเพลงว่า
หญิงคนรักของเราอยู่ณที่แห่งใดกลิ่นของนางยังหอมฟุ้งมาจากที่แห่งนั้นใจของเรายินดีในนางใด นางนั้นชื่อกากาติซึ่งอยู่ไกลจากที่แห่งนี้
พญาครุฑเมื่อได้ฟังก็ตกใจว่าเหตุไฉนคนทันนี้ถึงได้รู้ความจริงที่ตนลักพาพระนางกากาติจึงเอ่ยถามเป็นในว่า
ท่านข้ามทะเลไปได้ยังไง
เราข้ามไปได้ก็เพราะท่าน
แล้วไหนจะแม่น้ำเกปุระล่ะท่านข้ามไปได้อย่างไร
เราข้ามแม่น้ำไปได้เพราะท่าน
แล้วท่านข้ามทะเลอันกว้างใหญ่ไพศาลอีกตั้ง7 แห่งไปได้ยังไงกัน
เราข้ามทะเลทั้ง7 แห่งได้ก็เพราะท่านอีกนั่นแหละ
ฮะแล้วท่านขึ้นไปยังวิมานชิมพลีได้ยังไง
ก็ท่านอีกนั่นแหละที่นำเราขึ้นไป เราเกาะอยู่ในระหว่างปีกของท่านกระทำการกิจทั้งปวงนี้เพราะท่านเป็นผู้ชักนำเราไป
พญาครุฑพอทราบความจริงแล้วก็ถึงกับกล่าวติเตียนตนด้วยความเสียใจว่า
อันตัวเราเองก็มีร่างกายใหญ่โตเสียเปล่าช่างไม่มีความคิดซะเลยปล่อยให้ชายชู้ใช้เป็นพาหนะไปหาเมียทั้งขาไปและขากลับโอ้ยน่าเจ็บใจตัวเองซะจริง
ๆด้วยความละอายใจพญาครุฑก็เนรมิตกายคืนร่างดังเดิมแล้วบินกลับไปสุวรรณภพวิมานชิมพลีของตนพาพระนางกากาติมาส่งคืนพระราชาแล้วก็ไม่หวนคืนมาเล่นสกากับพระราชาและเหล่ามนุษย์อีกเลยพระพุทธองค์เมื่อตรัสชาดกแก่ภิกษุหนุ่มผู้กระสันอยากศึกพร้อมเหล่าพุทธสาวกทั้งหลายจบแล้วภิกษุหนุ่มผู้กระสันอยากศึกก็น้อมนำพุทธโอวาทฟื้นคืนสติกลับมาเจริญภาวนาจนในที่สุดก็บรรลุโสดาปัตติผลพุทธกาลครั้งนั้นนัตตกุเวนกำเนิดเป็นภิกษุผู้กระสันอยากศึกพระราชาเสวยพระชาติเป็นพระพุทธเจ้าพระคาถาประจำชาดกวาติจายังตะโตคันโทยัตถะเมวสตีปิยาทูเรอิโตหิกากาติยัตถะเมนิรโตมโนหญิงคนรักของเราอยู่ณที่แห่งใดกลิ่นของนางยังหอมฟุ้งมาจากที่แห่งนั้นใจของเรายินดีในนางคนใดนางคนนั้นชื่อกากาติอยู่ไกลจากที่นี้ไปกะถังสมุทธมัตตริกะถังอัตตริเกปุกังกะถังสัตตะสมุทฐานิกะถังสิมพลิมารุหิท่านข้ามทะเลไปได้อย่างไรท่านข้ามแม่น้ำชื่อเกปุกะไปได้อย่างไรท่านข้ามสมุทรทั้ง7ไปได้อย่างไรท่านขึ้นต้นงิ้วได้อย่างไรตะยาสมุทธมัตตรึตะยาอัตตริเกปุกังตะยาสัตตะสมุทฐานิตะยาสิมพลิมารุหึเราข้ามทะเลไปได้เพราะท่านข้ามแม่น้ำชื่อเกปุกะไปได้เพราะท่านข้ามสมุทรทั้ง7ไปได้เพราะท่านขึ้นต้นงิ้วได้เพราะท่านทิรัตถุมังมหากายังทิรัตถุมังอเจตนังยัตถะชายายะหังชารังอาวะหามิวะหามิจาติกากาติชาตกังสัตตมังน่าติเตียนตัวเราผู้มีกายใหญ่โตน่าติเตียนตัวเราผู้ไม่มีความคิดเพราะว่าเราต้องนำมาบ้างซึ่งชู้ของเมียตนเอง
Saranang
Saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami.
That ends our today's program. If you have any questions regarding our programs, please do not hesitate to contact us at info@buddhadhammatv.com. Our team is committed to sharing the noble and profound teachings of the Buddha, guiding you on your spiritual journey with his timeless wisdom. Thank you for being with us. See you tomorrow at the same time. Namo Buddhaya.